Hey, good evening, folks. It's Rick Wilson, and welcome to The Breakdown, brought to you by the Lincoln Project. My co-host, Tara Setmeyer, is off tonight on a very well-deserved vacation. She will be back with us on Thursday evening, and things will proceed with the normal hijinks and frivolity and hilarity that you have come to expect and adore. Tonight, we're going to be joined by my friend Peter Schorsch. We are going to spill all the Florida tea you could possibly want. He's one of the most knowledgeable people about Florida politics you could hope to come across. He knows the facts, the gossip, the rumor, the innuendo, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to ping pong all over the place. And trust me, by the time he's seen this on Twitter, Matt Gaetz will be clicking, watching the breakdown, probably for the first time. Well, welcome, Matt. Have fun with the whole thing. Folks, we do want your questions. If you want to send us your questions on the Twitter, just hashtag Ask the Breakdown. We try to get through them. We often have, a couple of hundred, so we try to get through them, expeditiously. We won't answer all of them, but we do try to read all of them. And you can also go old school and leave us a voicemail message. Some of the greatest questions we've got have been on the old voicemail. So that is 701-203-1208. That's 701-203-1208. And we have a promo for this. So let's go ahead and roll that.
Yeah, Tara, this is Tony Giacomella in Crescent City, California. You need to run for president. Rick Wilson, you need to be the vice president. I think that'd be fantastic. All right, see you guys later. Bye.
Well, before we bring Peter on, folks, I want to cover one quick story that broke over the weekend that is not about the topic of Florida. Over the weekend, well, except tangentially now, because it lives here. It was revealed over the weekend that Donald Trump's campaign has had to refund over $120 million of donations that they flat out stole from their donors. They sent out these email fundraising appeals, especially towards the end of the campaign when they were having a major cash crunch. Somehow Brad Parscale spent $1 billion before that, and they were broke in the fall. And what they did was, if you donated to them, there was a secret little itty bitty tiny checkbox, and it said, if you check this box, your donation will go again next month. It will make it into a recurring donation. They did it with a thing called dark patterns. It's a fascinating and horrifying subject on the internet. But I just want to mention there are a lot of people who are apparently super concerned about the integrity of campaign fundraising, and go fuck yourself. Because this is one of the most scammy scams of all times. I've never seen anything like it. And they have had to refund already $120 million from people they stole it from. And a lot of those people were seniors on a fixed income who were convinced that it was a rapid choice between them giving up the rest of their Social Security check and Antifa marching into their town and eating them alive in a cannibal frenzy of bloodlust and terror. So this is one of those stories. It is going to keep unfolding. You're going to see a lot more about this, because the more you peel back the layers of the Trump campaign and the way that the RNC worked and when Red worked, and the way it was all an integrated money pipe running back to Trump, and in many cases to the pockets of Trump family members and those associates, it's going to continue to unfold. This was a wedge in the door. You watch that story break out. It is going to get quite something. All right. Before we get on to that, let's take a recap of what's been going on in Florida with Peter. And let's bring in Peter. He's the editor and publisher of Florida Politics, statewide media platform that covers campaigns, elections, lobbying, legislative work, politics, government. It is the whole front. You guys should follow them on the Twitter and check them out at floridapolitics.com. It is as in-depth as you will get in this state. And as the newspapers have sort of collapsed in the country, they have become an increasingly important voice for folks to look to for immediate, timely, and interesting information about what's going on in Florida. And without further ado, I welcome my friend Peter onto the breakdown for the first time. And how you doing, man?
Good, man. Thank you for having me on. You are my fellow horse dad, and so it's good to be on to talk politics. And hopefully, we can get in and talk a little horses at the end.
I love that. I'm always down for that. I warned you what it was going to cost, though.
Why do you think I'm staying up late working? It's so that I can pay for the feed for the couple of ponies that we now have. They're multiplying like gremlins.
never expose them to light or money.
No.
So let's get to the first topic right away about how the Matt Gaetz story has been received in Florida among the political class, how they're taking it, how surprised or not surprised they were, and where you think this is going to head in the next few days. Because I know you've been covering this for a while, and you have a lot of the inside track on this story.
I think there's this thing going on right now where a lot of the national folks are covering Matt Gaetz, and they're finally putting some reporting to some of the things that have happened. And they're saying, wait a second, you're telling me there was a point system by a state lawmaker on how much he could have sex with other lawmakers and lobbyists. And this guy got elected to Congress. And there's all these stories that are that we have known about in Florida politics for the last decade. We thought we kind of foisted Matt into the national scene. We weren't going to have to deal with him. And you're just seeing one bad story after another kind of unfold from the national. It's the New York Times talking to the locals, and they're like, Jesus Christ, what was going on down there in Tallahassee? It's embarrassing in a lot of ways for the political process that this guy, and people have asked, who is Matt Gaetz? And I'm like, he's a very entitled son of a former Senate president, pretty smart guy, great debater. Rick, if you remember, and people, this has not really been reported, but he was, within a hair's breadth of becoming the speaker designate of the Florida House.
Oh, yes. Let's not forget when that,
in 2010, he got elected on what, he was called a redshirt freshman. He won a special election. And he was in the driver's seat to become speaker. And God only knows where we would be right now had that come to fruition. And so, there's a lot of scummy stories that are going to come to light. I think we saw, there is just no love loss for Matt Gaetz. He's kind of lorded over his position as like one of Trump's like proconsuls here in Florida. He's antagonized a lot of people. One of the things that he does, and again, I don't know if the national folks know this, but he gets involved in other people's business. Like he gets involved, he's up in Okaloosa County in the Panhandle. He gets involved in the Pasco County Sheriff. He gets involved in the Orange County Mayor. And he pisses off a lot of people. Hey, Rick, real quick, I know we're going to jump really quick. Ella Joyce just wanted to say hello because
hey, Ella.
She wanted to meet,
How are you?
to meet the man. Oh, don't want to, yeah. But you did her favorite television ad. So that's Ella Joyce, and she is just saying, all right. Night, baby doll.
All right. Well, Peter, let's go ahead and roll the package we have on the current update, and we'll talk about that on the other side.
Okay.
A friend of mine who's become very, very popular, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis' gubernatorial campaign is once again being overshadowed by a racial controversy.
All they're trying to do is slime me with what other people do.
One of your donors called President Obama the N-word.
How the hell am I supposed to know every single statement somebody makes?
The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up.
He's extraordinary in so many different ways.
The Miami Herald reporting on a possible bout of special vaccine treatment.
Is Florida's Governor DeSantis trading COVID vaccinations for votes?
Almost immediately, the line jumping started. He was partnering with Publix grocery stores across the state to distribute the vaccine in their pharmacies. Weeks before the governor's announcement, Publix donated $100,000 to his political action committee.
How is that not pay to play?
That's a fake narrative.
State Democratic leaders are calling for the Justice Department to investigate whether Governor DeSantis was rewarding high-dollar donors with special access to the vaccine.
It's a fake narrative. I just disabused you of the narrative, and you don't care about the facts.
He's a champ. He's a winner.
It's not like we live in the capital of the third largest state in the union, and my goddamn internet could work once in a while, but call me crazy. Anyway.
Rick, did you see last week? I don't know, just to jump in really quick, we got attacked by your friends, the Russians, and had a denial of service outage last week.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it was about 6 hours after we started writing about Matt Gaetz. And I'm not a conspiracy guy, but that was very weird.
No, but yeah, I noticed you guys have been knocked offline. I saw that during the day. And there is a large support infrastructure around the Trumpist leaders of this thing. And again, I'm sorry, folks, I lost you for a couple seconds there. But when you look at the way that Matt Gaetz has governed himself, it's because he is one of them. He is a Trump-style guy. He's one of these nationalist, populist-style guys. I mean, it's not a coincidence that Matt Gaetz took or initially had invited a guy named Charles Johnson, an outright neo-nationalist, white supremacist guy, to come with him to the State of the Union a couple of years ago. And so, they've got a lot of friends, and when they get attacked, they attack in return. I mean, it's amazing. Like when we're getting attacked at Lincoln Project, I often get the same tweet from guys like Michael True Patriot American 469-240-77124, and then a thing from 27 other people in the exact same language. But yeah, that is certainly something. One thing I want to talk about, Peter, is a lot of people paid attention in the last few weeks and months, and especially in the last few days, to Ron DeSantis, who a lot of people are looking at as the heir to Donald Trump. Can you tell us a little bit about where DeSantis stands right now, particularly on the Gaetz situation, because there seems to have been a little bit of a falling out of that old alliance, and where Ron DeSantis stands more broadly in terms of the politics in the state right now?
Yes. Ron DeSantis and Matt Gaetz had a little bit of a falling out during the election time. And if you remember, Matt was not as omnipresent. He was involved in the Capitol stuff, the insurrection, but there was a period in November when both he and DeSantis were very quiet. And my sources inside the governor's office told me that, that there was a little bit of Casey DeSantis in the ear of the governor saying, hey, now is our time. Trump has lost. We are going to be on track for 24. Matt isn't a family guy. Matt doesn't have kids. Matt is out doing these things. And I think there was a deliberate attempt by the First Family to put a little distance between Matt Gaetz and what they were trying to do in 2022. They were close. But I think, I don't want to say that they turned into frenemies, but I think that Matt had served his purpose. And so he was doing more and more cheerleading for Ron DeSantis, but he was not on the inside like he was in 2018, 2019. That would be one thing on that dynamic I know happened. Where Ron DeSantis is now is, he is, I keep saying that he draws to inside straights, that he needed Donald Trump to lose in 2020, but he needed Florida to still go red. And somehow he pulled that off. If you remember, there was that embarrassing scene for him when Trump threatened to fire him, like he was a contestant on Apprentice. DeSantis took that, personally. And I think that he really needed this scenario to happen, and he's got it. And he's now, he is in the driver's seat. DeSantis, you got to look at the psychology of the guy. This is a guy that was a college athlete, but, went to Yale on a baseball scholarship. He, walked into a congressional seat, didn't lose. He looks good in the crisp white Navy uniform. But then also, Rick, I think one thing that is overlooked that, if you remember that U.S. Senate race in 18, remember the summer of that, he was trailing David Jolly. He was trailing, and he could have easily finished. He could have easily dropped out before that race. Marco got back in and kind of changed the dynamics. But without the Trump imprimatur, Ron DeSantis was a candidate in single digits. He gets the Trump imprimatur, and he is where he is now, which is, I don't know if he's an heir, because an heir like assumes that there's going to be a natural succession. And I think the one conflict that is going to be the most interesting to watch in all of politics is, that moment when DeSantis tries to rise up, get past the old man, without losing the base. And it'll be interesting to see if Mar-a-Lago smacks him down. If he gets alienated, what he does. I don't believe that Donald Trump likes to see polls that say, Ron DeSantis is the first choice if Trump doesn't run. I just don't think he likes that kind of thing. And so I think he's going to have to try and draw again to another inside straight here and continue to rise up while not antagonizing Mar-a-Lago.
I'm curious when Ron DeSantis goes and makes his first trip to either Iowa or New Hampshire, because that is going to that will be the moment where Donald Trump's ire radar turns on full blast. Peter, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something, and you and I have both been talking, I'm sure, to a lot of the same people. And in the last, week and a half now that the Matt Gaetz story has exploded, I'm trying to express to people that very few folks in Tallahassee, when they heard this allegation of 17-year-old girls, they heard all this partying or the sugar daddy thing, very few people in this town were surprised. No one woke up that morning and said, Matt Gaetz, how dare you accuse him of that? That's absurd, right? I mean, this is not something that shocked a lot of people in terms of like his character, right?
No, not in the least. This is, in fact, this is, I'm surprised that this is what he's going down for in a way. I would have thought it would have been something more ridiculous in a way. Like Joel Greenberg is a cartoon character. I mean, we're there was an Orlando Sentinel report tonight that he was talking about killing himself, that he had explosives, et cetera, which, again, these guys, whether it be Brad, whether it be Greenberg, when the pressure gets to them, they do fold, and they are human like anybody else. But no, in Tallahassee, people that have been in the circle, and I've been tweeting about it. Like, this is not a surprise. It was not only the point system on the lobbyists, but there have been rumors about drug use for years. And I mean, I hate to be that guy, but like, you take one picture of Matt Gaetz pre-Fox News run, and then you see where he is at now, and it's Rick James time. Cocaine is a hell of a drug, and I know that that's a big accusation to throw out there, but if somebody were to make that accusation, I think the truth is going to set you free, and that's what we're hearing right now out of what's going on. Like, Rick, this reminds me of every scandal we've seen out of Tallahassee. The truth always gets worse. Right now, Matt Gaetz is denying what's going on, but I kid you not, the more I hear, the more sources talk about it, I think the grosser and the more grotesque the story is going to get, especially, the depravity. I mean, sheer depravity out of what has gone down in Orlando, what Joel Greenberg was doing out of that tax collector's office.
And I think people have not fully internalized yet that Joel and that circle around there was, if you add up Joel and Jacob Ingalls and Roger Stone and Jason, all those other people that are down there, these are some people that, as one current House member said to me, he said, there isn't Ghislaine Maxwell in this story. It is never better for Matt. Confess, throw himself on the murder of the people, because this hideous and is going to sell him out. He's looking at a very long stretch, and he's not a tough guy. And Matt, I think Matt is trying to do the Fox News bullshit machine and just yell louder and longer and try to push his way through it. But, the feds occasionally rise up, even in the great state of Florida, and slap people around for public corruption. I mean, there are two potential big public corruption cases in Florida going on right now. Matt and Jason's one of those big cases. There's another one we can talk about another time. But in this case, I mean, no one here was shocked. None of his colleagues that are still in the legislature had any moment of like, what? Of course Matt did it. Of course he is. And it's weird because, he was the only guy to vote against the revenge porn bill a couple years ago. And then in Congress, he's the only guy to vote against the sex trafficking bill. And then, have you seen the New York Times story from tonight?
I did.
The story that broke in the New York Times just before air. Yeah. And basically says that Matt was trying to get a blanket pardon from Trump, which, call me crazy, but that seems like a good deal. But unfortunately for Matt, it didn't happen.
Isn't that why he was pushing? I mean, now doesn't it make sense? Like, if the feds are, interrogating him in March, April of 2020, Jesus, that's an incentive. You talk about burning your ships at shore as an incentive to work harder. I mean, you're going to do whatever you can to overthrow the government to make sure you're not, put in, punky in the ass jail. I mean, that's what's going to happen to this guy. No, I think you bring up a broader point, which is Matt is also at the intersection, I think, of both of these scandals, the one in South Florida and in here. I think there's so many. You bring up Roger Stone, and the national audience knows him as kind of a character of what he is. But he's actually a very active operative in a lot of local and legislative races. He gets brought in by outside groups to do shenanigans. The stuff he does for Trump, he doesn't make money on that. We know that. We know that Trump doesn't pay him anything. And so he's got to make some money to live, and he makes it on doing the crappy stuff down ballot. And you talk about like a Jacob Engels, you talk about all these people, Matt Gaetz, Joel Greenberg. There's a whole cast of characters in Central Florida. I tweeted the other day, and I invite any national reporter, Google the Seminole Mafia. Seminole County, county next to Orange County. You've got a former Secretary of State that resigned in blackface. You've got bribery scandals out of the Central Florida Expressway Authority. You've got a lobbyist
airport scandal.
Airport scandal. Yes, that one. All of those are connected. And Matt Gaetz is only one step removed from them, if removed from them at all. And so, it's almost like there needs to be a statewide grand jury to look at all of this.
I think a lot of folks don't look at Florida and think, hey, that state is spectacularly corrupt. But I will tell you, pound for pound, Tallahassee is as corrupt as any city on earth. Pound for pound, the Panhandle is more corrupt than Miami, and Miami is more spectacularly corrupt than almost anywhere else on the planet. This is a state that's had a long run. And look, the shoe used to be on the other foot back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There was a thing that folks called the Pork Chop Gang, where these old school North Florida and Mid Florida Democrats ran the spoils system. They ran, all of this town had its own little like brothel on the edge of town called the Trailers. It had gambling dens. It had all this crazy Florida level stuff. And now it's a little cleaned up, and the restaurants are a little better, but there is still a deep corruption in this state. And look, every state with a one-party government eventually becomes corrupt. Every state with a one-party government, Republican or Democrat, every single time, it is inevitable. And the Democrats have gotten their asses handed to them in Florida for so long that these guys have a very top to bottom control of the state. So it's been a long run. But I still don't see the Democrats pulling off a big win in Florida in the near future, just because they can't get their heads out of. I mean, as I would say, they can't organize a 2-car motorcade in this state. What do you think about the future of the Democrats in statewide and legislative elections here?
A consultant who we both know said, we may not be the Harlem Globetrotters, but we play against the Washington Generals every election cycle. And that's just, for give an example, the down ballot races, which is kind of my bread and butter. And it's not necessarily to the national audience, but I always tell people our state Senate races are more expensive than your governor's races.
For sure.
We spend $15 million in some of these state Senate races. We'll do that in 6 or 7 of them. Same thing on the House races, where each one of those state House races, they're like what you would spend on a congressional race in another state. The 2 Democratic incoming leaders, the 2 people that are supposed to be charged with quarterbacking the Democrats' efforts going into redistricting and winning back seats. A guy named Ben Diamond out of St. Petersburg, really nice guy, and a gentleman named Perry Thurston, state senator from South Florida. Both of those people are most likely going to run for Congress in 2022, which means they're not going to be there to quarterback the Democrats' House operation and Senate operation. And so while the Republicans are doing all of the blocking and tackling, and they've got this A-list lineup of consultants just winning race after race, the Democrats just can't get their shit together. And it just happens election cycle after election cycle. And I understand the frustration with the national people, where they're like, you know what, we're just going to wash our hands of Florida at some point.
Yeah. We'll get back, Gaetz, and roll LP ad that came this evening.
Great talent, young, handsome, going places. You talk about defending, he's fantastic. Matt Gaetz.
Hey! Joining us now with reaction, author of the new book, Firebrand, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Joining us now to discuss, Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thank you for being here.
Why is there one member of Congress from either party, from either chamber, one alone, who voted no, who voted against increasing law enforcement funding to combat child sex trafficking?
Greenberg was indicted last summer on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking. Greenberg and Gaetz are close associates.
While continuing to build their case against Greenberg, the feds dug up some dirt on Congressman Matt Gaetz.
I'm proud to be a Matt Gaetz supporter.
You know, while the research guys were doing that, putting this together today, they came across a bunch of old Matt Gaetz tweets that did not age well. Let's go ahead and roll those.
Ooh.
Ooh. Everyone should respect Andrew Gillum's privacy as he explains why he was in a room, is one of 3 men in a hotel room, 3 bags of meth, too impaired to talk to the first responders. I know what you're all thinking. This is not very COVID-19 hygienic. Okay, Matt. Just because I own you on Twitter, don't confuse me with your daddy when it comes to abusing power for sex. Also, I missed your defense of Sharpton in your reply. That is a guy named Chris Latvala who called out Matt for the points game that Peter has mentioned a couple times, in which legislators went out and scored points on whether they had sex with lobbyists or other members or staffers, etc. So exciting. So ironically enough, Matt is scheduled to speak. Oh, wait, hold on. We've got more. Hold on. Wait. BB Rexa tweets, there's no age you can't be sexy. And Matt says, I say we change Florida's welcome signs to this. That's a bad tweet, Matt. You don't want that anymore. It's a bad tweet. You should pull that one down. So ironically enough, Matt is scheduled to speak this weekend at an event hosted by Women for America First, a group behind the January Stop the Steal rally on January 6th that preceded the Capitol riot. And the event will be held, and I know you folks are astounded to hear this, at the Trump National Hotel in Doral. It's interesting because, you know, Matt has been a guy who he's very deliberately not made a lot of friends in Congress. He's deliberately been sort of the firebrand, iconoclast, you know, jackass, whatever you want to say. And really, the only 2 people to really rise to Matt's defense so far, in a matter of spectacular irony, are Marjorie Taylor Greene and, of course, Jim Jordan. It's like John Wayne Gacy writing a note for Jeffrey Dahmer for good behavior. So there, a lot of his colleagues, Peter, and I know you've heard this. They're now reporting that, you know, he's sharing pictures of nudes of women on the floor of the House, showing women, you know, he's had sex with on the floor on his phone. I mean, and again, this is consonant with the character Matt has displayed in Tallahassee, which is a much smaller pool, for a long time. This is the reputation of this guy in this town. I had somebody reach out to me today. He was a former staffer who said, you know, this was not a guy that was a stranger to College Town in during session. This was not a guy who was a stranger to to, staying at Clive's till it switched over to the college crowd and not the lobbyist crowd. So, this is a guy who he is not. It's interesting because he's never been a guy with like a loyal staff or people that stuck with him for long periods of time, et cetera. I mean, I guess his sister is the only person that's like a long running member of his gang,
and she's been really quiet this week, I believe, right?
Yeah, super quiet, super quiet.
Yeah, and I almost feel bad for her because she's often decent. I'm not saying that she's always, but she's often decent, and it's like she's getting beat up pretty bad.
Yeah, I hear in the area, I hear in their home turf that it's really ugly, and they're taking and I think there's a lot of pent up dislike of Gaetz and sort of the lording over, because a lot of the guys that would be Matt's replacement if he left Congress, they're not even shy about lobbying the governor, are they? I mean, they're like right out there on this thing. They want that job if Matt goes.
Well, I think you bring up a good point at the beginning, which is, I'm not saying that Matt Gaetz is watching this right now, but he's a kind of guy that's going to swing at the pitches. And I think that that's been that's the beauty for someone like yourself, like myself. We know that we are going to get a rise out of this. And I don't know what his strategy has been. I get that he's trying to play the Donald Trump playbook. I think the Donald Trump playbook only works for Donald Trump. And Matt just continuing to, dig himself in. Just, I can't believe the interview on Tucker Carlson. I can't believe the bullshit he's trying to sell with the, hey, we were being extorted over here, so don't look at the sex trafficking over here. Like, and I don't think, one of the things that I always say about Matt and some of his colleagues is he covers his eyes and he thinks you can't see him. And that's his great fault here. We can see what he is doing. And I think it is caught up to him now after a decade of doing these kind of shenanigans, these pranks. It's not good old boys. This is not good old boy stuff. Like good old boy is do some work, go down to the restaurant, have some cigars and cut some deals. This is amateur hour, frat guy stuff, which I don't think there's, any stomach for anymore. And so, I all of the op-ed, all the think pieces, I think are right. I don't know how we allowed this to happen. And I hope that he is a cautionary tale to future lawmakers. I don't think he will be. Too many of the, there's just too many people behind Matt Gaetz wanting, that's part of the problem. You get to an Anthony Sabatini running for Congress right now. They literally say they want to be like Matt Gaetz.
Folks, if you're curious about this guy, Anthony Sabatini, he is the thirstiest mofo you'll ever meet in your life. He is desperate for fame and relevance, and he is a full-on cult-level Trumper of the first order. I mean, this is a guy who makes Matt Gaetz look like Winston Churchill. He's the most frivolous, lightweight, trifling mook you could ever hope to meet in politics. But I think he's really, in a lot of ways, the future of the Republican Party in this state. I mean, the Bush Republican Party, which, I came up in the 80s and 90s, and my cohort of consultants and advisors came up in that period. It's dead. It's dead as a doornail. I mean, Jeb Bush couldn't get invited to the opening of a phone book at this point. They want the MAGA. They want the transgressive, performative, bullshit, screaming, hair on fire stuff. And I think in a lot of ways they're getting it more from DeSantis than anybody else at the moment, which I want to loop back on for a second. How did the 60 Minutes interview go over in DeSantis' world in the last 24 hours? I think they looked at it as an opportunity to sort of burnish his credentials even further with the MAGA crowd.
No, absolutely. When I saw the clip, I thought it was going to be problematic because when the way his face looked and he was talking about disabusing somebody, I think that's a terrible word to use when you're talking to a woman. And I thought it was going to be, a repeat of DeSantis's speech or his press conference that he had with Mike Pence when he really lost it there. But no, they see it as a big misstep by CBS. by 60 Minutes. And it was, in a way, I will say this, they're not wrong. I think 60 Minutes, Rick, for people that don't live in Florida, going after Publix is like going after your great-grandfather. It's just the wrong company to pick on to start with. I think there is a huge scandal still in the pop-up vaccines, the idea of pop-up vax sites that he did, where he would go to a very wealthy enclave. He'd have 2,000 or 3,000 doses of a vaccine. And lo and behold, the developer of that, of that area had given him $100,000. That was really bad.
Shocking.
It happened in several locations. They should have gone after that. They really should have. And so I think that they missed, and it's, you come at the king, you best not miss. And I think that that's what they did with DeSantis. And he is going to ride this for the next, it's going to be Carlson and Ingram for the next week about, the corporate media. And he is going to, I still think, and I'll say it here and maybe I'll be wrong, I still think he is on the trajectory of a Scott Walker. I think he is the flavor of the month right now. I think he will be the flavor of the month for a little while. You asked a good question about what happens when he goes to Iowa and New Hampshire. This is not a very good retail politician. And I still think that is one of his big handicaps. He's not good with the national media. That's not going to play well. I'm not saying he can't get to the next level. He certainly has shown an ability to adapt to the next level, but he's not presidential timber yet. And he might think that he is, but he is not there yet.
Peter, one thing we haven't mentioned tonight is the other sort of major figure in Florida politics right now, who also has his own ambitions, who also has his own relationships with both DeSantis and Gaetz, and that's Rick Scott. Where's Rick Scott stand right now? How's he looking at the battlefield? Because his presidential ambitions have been absolutely no secret to anybody, and he's looking at the lesson Mitt Romney took when Romney ran as the head of RGA back in, I guess it was 2008. He was setting up for a national run. And now Scott is he's running NRSC, and I think he's doing the same thing. Where does Rick Scott politically stand in the state of Florida right now? How do you gauge his ambition right now? How do you gauge his relationships with the other two major players?
I think the polling bears it out about where Rick Scott is, that he is a far away second or third choice. In fact, before the scandal, I would have said that Matt Gaetz was actually the number 2 choice out of Florida. If there's a Florida lane in the 2024 primary, DeSantis, Gaetz, Scott, and Rubio, I would have thought actually that Gaetz may have had a better shot at it than Scott. Scott's underestimated. I liken him to Eli Manning. He's not very pretty. Eli Manning ended with a 500 career regular season record, but he had 2 Super Bowl rings. Same thing with Rick Scott here. He's won 3 times statewide in Florida, which, as you know better than anybody, is just not easy. That being said, he now has probably he has the worst job in national politics. He has got to try and take back the Senate for the Republicans on a map that is horribly unfavorable for them. And he keeps losing credible candidates, people, retiring away, while people like Rob Johnson, et cetera, they stay in there. I think about the dilemma right now that he had. It was so interesting the other night, Rick. The NRSC announced they were supporting Murkowski. They put that out at 7:00 on Good Friday. That's how little they believed in that they were trying to slide that by. And it's because Trump's going to go against Murkowski. And so you're going to have this position where Rick Scott is going to be fighting Donald Trump almost by default, because he's going to be, backing Chamber of Commerce, Mitch McConnell's crowd, incumbents, et cetera, going into 2022. It's, and so if he thinks that the NRSC job is a platform, I think he's mistaken. I also, he's self-funded in each of his victories. Maybe not as much in the last one, but certainly in the first 2 races. For sure. Depending on how much he's worth, he does not have enough money to self-fund this entire campaign.
No, not
have
even
enough
close.
Money, not even close nowadays. And so that advantage that he has had in the last 3 statewide races, yeah, he's got operational money for sure. He's going to pay, Kurt Anderson is probably on his fourth vacation house at this point on what he's gotten out of Rick Scott. But it's not enough to win. It's not even enough to win in Iowa and New Hampshire at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think especially dealing with Trump, Rick Scott's, frankly, weird and sort of off-putting affect. I can't imagine him in the same room with Trump for very long. Trump would think he was freakish and strange and bizarre, and would not be able to handle Rick Scott, because Rick Scott has those gestures and that stare, and it just isn't going to go there. All right, let's take a couple tweets and see what we got. Come at us, people. What's the most damning thing we should know about DeSantis? Good question. Peter, I'll let you take that.
All right, so offhand, I think the excess death story is a big one for him. That if you look at how this administration has not been transparent at all when it comes to COVID. And they keep saying what a great job they're doing. When you look at, and it came out about a week ago, the excess deaths, I think that's going to be I think that will play out going forward. I think also, DeSantis, he has played at the national money level. Some of the people, I forget the guy who went to prison, Brody. Am I thinking about the right guy?
Elliot Brody. Yeah.
That was a big backer of Ron DeSantis. He just had
interesting.
He just had Miriam Adelson in Tallahassee about a week and a half ago to talk about the gambling deal. So he's got a lot of that national money that he might be. You could tie some of those people around DeSantis in a statewide, a Democrat could in a statewide race. I think that there's a little bit. I think we saw with the 60 Minutes interview. You cannot go straight at Ron DeSantis. Like he is. He will shout you down. He's coming from that Trump playbook on that one. He was on Fox. Remember, before there was Matt Gaetz, there was Ron DeSantis. He was on Fox News as much as Gaetz was. And so he's trained on how to be good at television. And I'm not saying he's a great looking guy, but he's a better looking guy than that forehead that is Matt Gaetz. So you go straight at Ron DeSantis, I think you're going to have to lose.
I believe I dominate the forehead Olympics.
Yeah, but yours goes back. His just goes straight up. It's just this. The Botox.
Oh my God.
At some point, we're going to have to talk about the Botox and the Xeomin that is just running through Florida Republican politics. I don't know what's going on with Lenny Curry, but his head is as smooth as
like scientists would have to invent a whole new area of mathematics to describe the smoothness of that man's skin at this point. Let's take another tweet. On a scale of 1 to Florida Man, how Florida Man is Matt Gaetz? It's my friend Operative X-Ray. Let me say this. In my view, he is a full hyacinth, which is a 10, and then you have we know some more exotic characters, but
he is, because not only is he Panhandle, right? Which is basically Lower Alabama. And anybody that doesn't get down there, and just when you go through, not just Pensacola, but when you go through some of the shit kicker towns along the way, it's beautiful country, but it's different than the rest of Florida. But the thing about Matt that's interesting is he's not afraid to, Rick, and again, it's another beautiful part about Florida politics. There's been this Cuban North Florida connection for years now, for the last decade. And it's kind of been the power balance, and Matt's part of that. He's like the ambassador from the Panhandle down to Hialeah. And so he's
which is why there's even a tie into the Artilles. Which is why there's even a tie into the Artilles thing with Matt. How is it possible? They literally live as far apart in the state as you possibly could live. Okay, it's like 700 miles away from each other.
But they love Trump. They love putting a flag on a boat. They hate socialism. It's like just two. It's almost like it's the same people, just completely different geographic areas. But yes, so I think Matt is definitely like, he's a 14 on a scale of 10 as a Florida man.
Right. All right, let's get another. Aren't there aspects of the DeSantis executive order that are illegal, forbidding vaccine centers from providing written proof to patients, violates patients' right to health records? Well, Kenneth Krause, it is a great question. Neither Peter or I are attorneys, and I would not dare to represent myself as such. So let's do one more tweet. I don't know the answer. We'll get that for you. You got one more tweet, guys? Deep fried spud. Oh, God. You know, I'm going to steal this line from
You
Jonah
got a good
Goldberg.
audience.
Yeah, they're good. They're good people. All right, let's do one more. We got one more? How does Twitter compare to the invention of the printing press and social upheaval that happened in the Middle Ages? Because well, as a philosopher and historian, guys, Twitter is where it is right now. There will be something else in the future. It is part of the evolutionary development of how a public forum is no longer physically dependent. So other than that, you know, it is aside from being a benighted hellscape in many ways, it is the forum right now in a lot of ways for people that are actively, you know, talking about politics. It's not as relevant as some people think. It's not as irrelevant as others think. God knows. I just get up every morning and I say to myself, I can't wait to see what Donald Trump. Oh, wait. Anyway, hey, Peter, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Folks, be sure to check out Sunburn, which is the Florida Politics Daily newsletter. I think we've got a graphic for that. There
We're
you
working
go.
on tomorrow's edition right now.
All right. And also Influence Magazine, which is another publication that Peter and the team put out. I've written a couple pieces for that over the years. And again, Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Let's do this again sometime, because there's one thing we can guarantee the audience: Florida politics is never going to slow down or get dull, and we will always bring you the most exotic possible outcomes in the great state of Florida. So thanks again for being with us. Give our best to Ella and wish her well in her writing career, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
Have a great night. All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was us getting in the weeds on some Florida gossip, but I hope you enjoyed it, because I certainly did. And we love being able to answer questions about areas that we know, and to dig in on personalities of people that we know. And you know, the three guys we talked about tonight, they are all going to be major figures in the national stage here for a bit. Matt may be a major figure in a legal sense pretty soon, but we'll see what happens. Folks, we could not do this without you. And what I want to do tonight is our call for action is to ask you to make sure that you have followed us on Twitter, both LPTV, which is, you know, the channel for this show. And by the way, our numbers for LPTV have come in for the last month, and I thank you. It is absolutely so heartwarming and amazing to see the numbers that have come in. Every one of our shows has been picking up. We're engaging with the audience in ways that are I'm so grateful for. You know, and look, there are a lot of ways to stay in touch with us. We've got the Honestly Abe newsletter, which comes out every day, and it's a quick overview of what we're thinking, what's going on, you know, what we're tweeting and talking about, new ads. Sometimes you'll get our ads in Honestly Abe first, so keep an eye out for that. It's a free newsletter. You should subscribe. Again, follow us at LPTV, or on the platform of your choice. We're all those places: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Bebo, Zanga, MySpace. I'm kidding about the last part. And also subscribe to our podcast if you have a minute. And that is something that, you know, each week you'll hear Reed Galen, Stu Stevens, myself, and some very special guests join in and have some really tight and interesting conversations about where the country is right now. It's like sitting in on one of our strategy meetings most of the time, because we really don't filter it out. We really don't do anything with it that you wouldn't hear if you were on our morning Zoom every morning. Tara will be back with me on Thursday of this week. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We had a great audience tonight and some great questions from the audience. I am so grateful for your attention and your time. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of The Breakdown. Thanks so much.
Look at Donald Trump. I never thought that we would elect a president who basically considered church a place that you go every 10 years or so to marry a model. But we did. And those who were supposedly the most adamant about organized religion are the ones who supported him the most.
You're Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I just answered a whole bunch of questions.
And you've been caught taking a siesta on the job. Better hurry back to the Houston Hacienda with the new Cancun Cruise action playset from Donco. Now you can relive Ted's excellent adventure, complete with exclusive accessories like the overnight Ted bag, filled with a week's worth of clothing and traveler's checks. The Ted phone. Call your freezing aides back in Texas and force them to book you a flight home. A Pina Cruzlada to go. And 2 Ted masks. Don the Lone Star flag face mask for the return home and show those cameras you cared all along. Or add some extra mystery to your excursion with the Detective Ted accessory kit. Which one of your wife's traitorous friends leaked her text messages to the failing New York Times? Find out with your Deerstalker cap and magnifying glass. Cancun Cruise. The power's out, but the heat is on. From Donco. Cancun Cruise contains a substance known to the state of California to cause cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harms. To order, call 201-305-9163. Snowflake Houston Hacienda sold separately.
It had never been done before. A plan so crazy it just might work. Stir a bunch of frat boys and Nazi real estate agents into invading the Capitol, overthrow a democracy, and if it fails, pretend it never happened. But it would take one hell of a team to pull it off. Drawn from the fetid swamps across America, they are the Squalid. Kevin McCarthy, the leader.
And President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet. Do not be silent about this.
Mo Brooks, the co-conspirator.
Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
Lauren Boebert, logistics.
Well, I'm certainly not indulging in conspiracy theories that said that I was a part of the attack on our nation's capital.
Ted Cruz, the money man.
Each of you look around, the men and women that are gathered here, you are patriots.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, the brains.
Representatives and senators can be kicked out, and it's a crime punishable by death.
Matt Gaetz, the revisionist.
But make no mistake, the left in America has incited far more political violence than the right.
Josh Hawley, the little bitch.
We do need an investigation into irregularities, fraud. We do need election security reforms.
Rick Scott, American Voldemort.
We've got to figure this out. We've got to be able to prevent this from, I don't know if anything will happen with this election, but clearly we can't let this go on for the next election.
Okay. Jim Jordan, the cheerleader.
I don't know how you can ever convince me that President Trump didn't actually win this thing based on all the things you see, the 11 million more votes. He won 19 to 20 bellwether counties. He won Ohio by 8, Iowa by 8, Florida by 3, somehow doesn't come.
And Tommy Tuberville denies any knowledge of having planned this whole thing at the Trump Hotel on January 5th.
You know, our government wasn't set up for one group to have all three of branches of government. It wasn't set up that way. Or three branches, the House, the Senate, and the executive.
They did their damnedest to steal your democracy, and there's not much stopping them from trying again. Oh yeah, except elections. Don't forget what they did. Remember their names, and then vote these seditious shit trumpets out. Donco Films brings you The Squalid.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.